Hey everyone, this is Victor from Cyborg for Life, and today I have a special interview for you. They're a cosmetic stature lengthening patient who underwent femur limb lengthening using the internal stride nail nearly 2 years ago. Now, this interview is going to be a little bit different than most in that the patient asked to remain completely anonymous, and so to honor that request, you're going to only hear their audio, but you're going to hear and see my video, okay? It doesn't matter though, because you're going to still get the full insight into their limb lengthening experience. And so with that said, please enjoy the interview with Jason. Thanks so much for coming on and sharing your experience with everybody.
Oh yeah, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So just to set the scene for everybody to know, how long ago did you have femoral lengthening with the stride nail?
So I had it done at the same time, obviously, both femurs, and that was about 2 years ago now. And it feels like it's gone by pretty quickly.
And how tall were you before the surgery?
So before I had it done, I was 169 centimeters,
Mhm.
which is about 5'6" and a half, and I'm now 176 centimeters, which is about 5'9" and a third.
Oh, nice. Very good.
And so I technically lengthened 6.3 centimeters using the machine. But it seems that I gained about seven, like possibly from the initial break that the surgeon did and straightening of the bones as well. He thinks might have contributed as well. So yeah, there's a couple of factors there.
How did you find out about limb lengthening?
So I started researching it while I was at university because it had been something. Obviously, I kind of I guess I thought like there was nothing I could do right.
Hmm.
But then once I looked into it, I realized there was this thing that I could do. And I also came across the limb lengthening forum
Hmm.
and watched a couple of videos on YouTube, and I just sort of went from there and talked to a couple of people on the forum, and yeah, and then just researched into it.
Just went for it. I like it, man. That's very cool. How long did it take you from like where you first learned about it to like actually go through with it? Was it only like a matter of months or was it like a year?
No, yeah, this was a long time because I had to kind of convince my family as well to get on board with it. Um, so I probably from when I first heard about it to when I actually went through, probably I think about 3 years.
Okay. Um, so now I want to, just talk little bit about your mindset. And so what were the thoughts that were going through your head in the weeks leading up to the procedure?
So in the weeks leading up, I think I was just focused on like my stretches really, and just
Mhm.
making myself as flexible as I possibly could.
Mhm.
Um, but like on like the day before the surgery, I was pretty like nervous, and I did have a kind of a freak out, thinking like, am I doing the right thing? Am I making the right choice? What if it goes wrong? All those sorts of all those sorts of thoughts come into your head.
Mhm.
Um, but my family reassured me because they knew how much it meant to me, and they were there for me. If anything was going to happen, and so they sort of encouraged me, and yeah, and I went through with it, and I'm really
Wow,
glad that I did.
that's awesome. Yeah, definitely. I know that like a support network is super important for a procedure like this. So I'm glad you had that. Now D-Day is here. Surgery day is, finally upon you. What's going through your brain now?
So I got up quite early to have the operation,
Mhm.
and yeah, so definitely, I'd say most of all nervous. I was a little bit excited that it was actually happening,
Yeah.
but mostly nervous, because the thing is, you don't really know what it's like until you're actually there on the operating table.
Hmm.
So you can kind of prepare for it, but it's always going to be, a new experience.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember the same thing for myself. It's just like I was excited to finally get the thing, over with. But then once you like have the surgeon come in and mark your legs, and it's like you meet everybody, it's like, oh gosh, this is really happening. Very cool. So now you started the lengthening about a week after the surgery. Did you ever think to yourself, did any thoughts go through your brain like, what did I get myself into? And were you just kind of ready for the challenge ahead?
Yeah, like so definitely the first few days, when you're sat in bed, your legs are very swollen, you're in a lot of pain.
Yeah.
There is that kind of thought that pops into your head, like, what have I done? I've done this to myself. But like overall, it was always there that like, this was what I wanted, and I was happy that I'd started this process now, getting closer to what I actually wanted.
Mhm.
And like so after the first couple days, I think actually yeah, when I actually started lengthening with the machine,
Mhm.
I think that made quite a big difference because like so I had a week basically after to recover just from the surgery itself. Um, and when I started using the machine, like it felt like I was doing it then. So I definitely didn't feel like what have I got myself into now? Then it was just more like, okay, yeah, how can I yeah, like just make sure that it all goes okay, and yeah,
Yeah.
physio
Yeah.
stuff.
Did you have any slow bone formation or any type of complications along the way, or was it kind of a smooth sailing type procedure?
So initially, I was worried about having too quick formation. I was
Okay.
worried that my bones were going to fuse before I started lengthening because I'm quite young.
Yeah.
But my surgeon was like, no, don't worry, like it'll be fine. The only complications I did have were, I think, when I got to about 3 centimeters,
Hmm.
when I was lengthening with the machine, sometimes I'd get like a sort of electrical shock in my
Oh,
legs, and we think that was probably like a nerve response.
yeah.
But the way to resolve that was, to just take a couple of days off lengthening, and then maybe, because I would do it like 4 times a day to get 0.25 each to get 1 millimeter per day.
Okay.
So the thing was, maybe, okay, maybe I'll only do it twice today and sort of just take it a bit slower, and that seems to resolve it.
I see.
And then also, so towards the end, so I got 6.3 centimeters in total.
Hmm.
Um, but when I reached that point, there was a sort of, it's hard to describe, but like, I want to say like a clunk,
Hmm.
as in like if you've ever ridden a bike and you change gears, it sort of felt like that a bit. And to me, that just felt a bit wrong. And I was kind of happy with the point that I'd reached at that point, and I didn't want to push it anymore.
Okay.
So I just said, yeah, I'm happy where I am now. I'm average now, so I'm happy to stop here.
Very cool. Okay. Yeah. Do you think that could have been maybe the nail, or was it something in your body? Do you know what it
Yeah,
was?
I don't know. I discussed it with my surgeon, and he wasn't worried. But
Okay.
I think, yeah, when I get my nails out, I think he wants to take a look at it.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, I think it was something to do with the nail. Yeah, but it wasn't anything to be worried about, apparently.
Okay, very cool. All right, so you were going through the lengthening phase. You're getting your length. You're getting taller slowly but surely. But once you reach the consolidation phase where you start to heal. Were you relieved that you were like, hey, I made it through the process. I've reached my height. I'm happy with myself now. Was there like a kind of a sense of relief?
Definitely, yeah. Because once you're at that point, you've got that height already under your belt.
Yeah,
So it's not like you could have lengthened 1 centimeter and then something's gone wrong and you have to stop. That
yeah,
was always like a big worry of mine as well.
absolutely.
Um, and so then also, yeah, so when I stopped lengthening, I could just focus on my physio and like correcting my gait and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely relief. Yeah.
That's what everybody says. It's like once that distraction phase, is done, it's like, whew, so very cool. Now, talking about physical shape and physio, were you in good shape prior to the surgery? You mentioned that you were stretching before the surgery. What was your physical, shape like before the surgery?
Yeah. So I'd say like I wasn't in like especially good shape. I wasn't overweight.
Okay.
I'd say just average, probably like average cardio, average strength. I had like a reasonable diet. I didn't eat particularly healthy or unhealthy,
Mhm.
because the main thing I focused on was my flexibility.
Okay.
So I I made sure that I could put my palms on the ground like with straight legs, and I could get like lying on my back. I could lift my leg up to like a 130-degree angle,
Hmm. Hmm.
because that was the most important thing for me, was flexibility. Because I think, if you're stretching everything, everything else has got to stretch with it. So yeah.
That's very good. Yeah. So good. You worked on the most important aspect, and that's what I preach on the YouTube channel is
Yeah,
flexibility,
definitely. Yeah.
physical therapy. So you did it. Good job, man. Now let's talk about pain. Because right after the surgery, a lot of patients always say that it's like really unbearable, but then some patients say that it's not. What was the experience like for you?
So like I knew going into it, it was going to be painful, right? If you've ever had a broken bone,
Yeah.
like it's not a pleasant experience. And further to that as well, right? Like it's kind of permanently broken because your body's trying to heal itself, and
Right.
you're like constantly pulling it away. Um, but it wasn't. So I prepared myself for pain, but it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. I
Okay.
think the pain meds helped a lot, but it was still bad. Like it did hurt a lot. Uh, but yeah, for me personally, it was I could deal with it.
That's amazing. Yeah, but I always preach that it's mental manifestation. If you can kind of imagine it ahead of time, it can kind of get you used to it before
Yeah.
it happens. So very cool. What about like when you were sleeping at nighttime?
Yeah, so I had to get used to sleeping on my back
Hmm.
because it was too painful to like sleep on my side or my
Hmm.
front. I think because like where the nails are
I see.
at the top. But so yeah, and like occasionally I'd wake up in pain. I guess like definitely early on, right after the operation, I was more likely to wake up in the middle of the night. Other than that, though, it wasn't too bad. I think like relatively normal sleep, not anything too bad.
Wow, very cool. And then what about during physical therapy? Was your pain levels elevated when you were doing the stretches, and things like that?
Yeah, so that was probably one of the most painful bits was so interestingly enough as well, like before the operation, my quads were super flexible, like
Mm-hmm.
the most flexible part of me,
Mm-hmm.
and my hamstrings weren't as good, I think. But it turned out that when I was doing the physio, recovering, like the absolute worst exercise was I'd be on my front and like pulling your foot like towards your back, if you know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean.
Yeah.
And that was like extremely painful. I used to have to bring like a gag to stop myself from shouting out, just because like the physio would be, pushing on my leg. But like it wasn't like it stopped immediately as soon as she stopped pushing. So it was only like very, very temporary. And
Right.
if it went too far, she could easily stop it.
Right.
But that was, yeah, that was a very painful part of the process.
That's super interesting because usually for femur lengthening patients, I find that, well, from what I hear from them, they said that the posterior chain, the hamstrings usually get
Mhm.
tighter, but in your case, the
Yeah, so
quadriceps
it was the opposite for me.
is
Yeah,
the opposite.
even though I believed, before that my quads were a lot
Mhm.
more flexible than my hamstrings. So it kind of goes to show like you can prepare as much as you can, but
Right.
you don't really know how your body's going to react.
Yeah, yeah, that's very cool. Awesome. So what type of accessories did you use during your lengthening journey? Like, did you use things like stretching straps, ice packs? What type of things did you use to help you?
So was this for stretches or while I
Mhm.
was recovering?
What's that?
Sorry, was this for like just for like was this
Oh
before
yeah,
the
yeah. So
operation
like
or after?
stretch. Yeah, but we'll do let's do recovery first. What type of, like, did you use ice packs or heating pads or anything like that?
Okay. So yeah, recovery. So initially, like while I was in the hospital, ice definitely when my legs were really swollen.
Yeah.
But then once I got home, like
Hmm.
heat packs definitely helped a lot to
Hmm.
help with the pain that I'd sometimes get in my legs.
Okay.
I also had like a little kind of like a bicycle thing. It's hard to describe. It's like imagine like just the pedals of a bicycle.
Yeah.
I don't know what it's called, but I kind of used that
Hmm.
initially, especially like during the early stage of my operation. That was quite good to get my legs moving.
Okay.
And I didn't obviously have to like climb up onto a proper bicycle thing, so I could sit in a chair and I'd have this thing by my feet that would enable me to like pedal.
Yeah.
And also, someone at the hospital recommended this machine to me, and I don't know what it's called,
Hmm.
but you sit on your back and it
Hmm.
basically moves your leg for you. I think
Ah,
it might be
yeah.
like called an isokinetic machine or something like that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
that was extremely helpful at the beginning, because
Yeah.
it was moving my leg for me, like getting me used to that
Hmm.
when it was in a particularly difficult stage. So I definitely
Right.
recommend that.
Yeah, those CPM, I think it's a CPM machine,
Yeah,
continuous
it might be
passing
that.
motion.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, those are
yeah,
really useful for people with this type of procedure. So now let's talk about for therapy type accessories, things like straps and stuff. What type
yeah.
of accessories?
So the only thing I used to stretching was basically um, like a long, like one of those stretchy band things,
Okay.
like rubber, like
Mhm.
very long, and so like you can put it around your foot and lift your leg in the air and stretch your hamstrings and things like that.
Yep.
And then I'd go on my back and do the same thing and like pull my feet towards my back.
Gotcha.
I don't think I used anything else. But
Okay.
before the operation, I'd use that, but also I could do other stretches like standing up and
Right.
um, things like that. But
Yeah. Wow. Bare minimum, like it, but you got the job done.
yeah,
Okay. Very cool. But yeah, I think that little bike pedal thing that you were using is really interesting because you don't hear a lot of people talk about that, but that's super important
mhm.
to get that motion and get those muscles
Yeah,
moving.
definitely, and get blood flow and all that
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah.
Did your therapy prescribe that for you, or did you just buy that?
No, so that was from the recommendation of
Okay.
a patient that I'd met up with before.
Okay, very cool. That's a good recommendation. I'm glad you mentioned
Yeah.
that. Now let's talk a little bit about your physical therapy experience. Was it harder than you expected? You mentioned a little bit about it earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. Again, like I did know this was going to be a difficult process. So I was very mentally prepared for
Okay.
anything. I guess that would have been thrown at me. And like further to that as well, I did have like fantastic support from my family
Hmm.
who were always there and help. Like I really, they helped me through it so much. But yeah, the hydrotherapy was quite good actually.
Oh,
So I
yeah.
don't know if that's a common thing done, but that was quite good because you can move quite freely then, even when you can't without crutches.
Hmm.
You can sort of move through the water, and you can put all your you can do like kind of jumping if you know what I mean, because it's not fully weight bearing in the water, kind of
Right.
supports your body.
Hmm.
So that was good. Yeah, the hydrotherapy was good.
Yeah, that's excellent. How often did you do hydrotherapy?
So I did that. I think it was once a week. I
Once a
think
week.
it's difficult for me to remember now because that was so long ago.
Right. Yeah, but the fact that you actually did that, because I know that's super helpful in terms of, like you just said, you can move in all different angles and do things you can't
Yeah,
do,
exactly.
that when you're freestanding. Very cool. And you said that you felt that you were the tightest in the quadriceps, so we talked about that. What about your hip flexors and your glutes? Did you feel like you were tight in the upper near your hips?
I didn't feel that tight in my hips. No, I was always pretty good with them. The only thing I did have with my hips was initially like a sort of bony bit pointing out I
Okay.
had, but it subsided with the weeks following. Yeah, I think my flexibility otherwise, like there's nothing else that sticks out.
Very good. Very good.
Remember.
So you're a believer in that being in good shape or flexibility or being flexible before the surgery is a good thing.
Yeah, I think definitely I think personally, like that's the most important thing I think you can do in preparation is
Yeah.
just get yourself as stretchy as possible because the more you stretch, the easier it's going to be for your body to stretch,
Absolutely.
catch up with your bone.
Yeah.
Um, what was I going to say?
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry, yeah.
No, that's okay. I completely agree. I think that it helps with two things. It's like the actual muscle suppleness and flexibility, but it also helps you get into a routine and a mindset, like you said earlier,
Definitely, yeah, yeah,
because you're going to be going through this procedure for months. So having that
definitely.
routine down is important.
One thing is I would say as well, upper body strength is quite important as well
Ah,
because initially when you're moving yourself around and you can't use your legs, it's
yeah.
pretty good to be able to like lift yourself up with just your arms.
Yeah, that's super important. And working out and, just to stay fit, it's really good.
Yeah.
Now we're going to talk a little bit about sleeping, your experience with sleeping. You mentioned earlier that you had to sleep on your back and train yourself how to do that. Was it difficult? You said you slept pretty regularly, but was it difficult in the first, let's say, 2 weeks? Was it a little bit more difficult and then it got better, or was it just easy from the get go and it just stayed?
Yeah, I think everything was harder at the beginning,
Okay.
and so I
Yeah.
think sleeping was more difficult at the beginning. So yeah, sometimes I wouldn't sleep well and I'd just nap then.
Okay.
But yeah, like it wasn't personally, I didn't have too many problems with it.
Gotcha. And the pain meds helped out a little bit when, you were
Yeah,
irritated.
definitely. So yeah, I'd have them. I'd kind of time them. I'd have my pain meds like right before I go to bed, and
Gotcha.
also right before physiotherapy, so that I could get
Mhm.
like the most out of it.
Yeah, yeah, that's a really smart move. It's like timing your pain meds, around different events really help you kind of manage those type
Yeah,
of situations. Very cool.
definitely.
Now we're talking about cosmetic stature lengthening here, and obviously not everybody wants to tell people that they got it done. Obviously, we're doing an anonymous interview. Did you just keep it, within your close family and maybe like a friend or two, or did you? Is it just something that if you saw people, it's like you didn't just tell them, but you kept it under wraps? Like how did you go about the exposure of your procedure?
So everyone in my family knew
Okay.
basically, and then so initially I told some close friends,
Okay.
and then it branched out to a few more friends. So then a couple of friends knew before I was having the operation,
Right.
and then basically like the rest of my friends I told after I had the operation when I was still like lengthening, they'd
Okay.
come visit me and stuff. Um, Pre-COVID times, obviously,
Okay.
um, and yeah, check on me. Um, yeah, so most of my family and friends knew, but if I meet people now, I don't tell them.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
Because there's no point. I mean, you're done. You got your
yeah,
height, and the fact that you're sharing this experience is very helpful. But is it were your friends and family? They were very supportive. You said, right?
so my family always were, and most of
Okay.
my friends were, but
Okay.
a few of my friends did try and dissuade me from like some of the ones who knew before I was going through with it, they
Hmm.
did try and persuade me not to go through with it. And I understand why. They had my best interest at heart,
Right.
and for them, they thought, this is crazy to take your healthy body and purposefully damage it. And I do understand that. Like, I think objectively, like it is,
Yeah.
it's a big thing.
Hmm.
But I think I knew that it was the right decision for me. Um, and I don't think that they understood how much like my height neurosis impacted me.
Right. Yeah. And just the fact that you wanted this. I mean, everybody wants something in life, and this is something you wanted, and you got it. So, um, now what about like if somebody saw you during like, on crutches and stuff like that? What was your excuse to tell them, like when they say, "What happened to you?"
Yeah. So if it wasn't one of my family or friends, and it was someone I didn't really want to talk to about,
Hmm.
I basically said that I had a femoral osteotomy. to correct the rotation of my femurs.
Yeah. That's the excuse that I'm telling everybody to go with, is saying
Because it's kind of the same operation, but
it
without the lengthening.
is. It's so much the same. Literally, you have to fix the bone, and that's what I tell people. It's like you have to get a rotation, and then they're like,
Yeah.
but then so that's amazing. And then if somebody says you can get taller, what was your excuse then? Did you get taller?
Yeah, so I think also, so I used to wear shoes with quite a big heel increase in them.
Okay.
And then while I was, lengthening and whatever, I didn't. I just wore normal shoes. So like from their perspective, I probably didn't change that much.
Okay.
But if people did notice, I could kind of just put that down to the surgery, because most people don't understand surgery, right? So if you just say, oh yeah, I had a femoral osteotomy, it sounds complicated. And if they said, oh, you got taller, you could just say, yeah, I did a bit.
Yeah. That's you can just say that rotation and the angles make you taller. That's all you have to say.
Yeah,
So
yeah, exactly.
they don't know too much about it. And then what about proportion changes? Did you notice any changes in your limb length proportions?
So like looking back at photos I have now, I actually think my legs look too short, which is funny. So I personally, I don't think my proportions have been messed up. Like I think I'm happy with them as they are.
Okay.
And nobody's commented on them, has said, oh, your legs look a bit long or whatever, or your femurs look a bit long. I don't think people really notice that. And I think you can also change that with the clothes that you're wearing and the shoes. Like there's a whole bunch of variables going on there.
Absolutely.
So it's not something I've been worried about.
Yeah, I think that a lot of illusion factors can really be helpful in terms of like even working out and filling out the muscle can, shift somebody's perception of what your proportions look like. So that's very cool. And speaking of working out, what type of things can you do now physically? Do you have a normal walking gait now?
Yeah, so I'm like 100% normal.
100, that's awesome.
In terms
Very
of walking
cool.
out, and I can go for a run, go for a jog.
Oh wow, that's awesome, man! Congratulations. What about jumping and agility moves?
So I don't really ever do jumping. Like I can jump, but I haven't like really tested it.
Okay.
I haven't really been back to the gym since, because I kind of finished and then I was doing other stuff, and then COVID and lockdown happened. So I'm hoping to get back into that. The only thing I have noticed is that, so sometimes I'll do squats, in my room at home, and that's definitely more difficult.
Okay.
So, if you're like a keen weightlifter, that might be a factor you want to take into consideration before you get your femurs lengthened, because it can change, the biomechanics of that and that stuff. Yeah.
Okay. Very cool. Awesome. And at the end of the day, I just want to ask you, like, was it worth it? Would you do it again?
So for me, absolutely. Like I have no regrets, basically.
That's awesome.
And the thing is, like, so I will sometimes, everyone will wish they're taller. So, sometimes I think, oh, I wish I was 6 foot.
Yeah.
But it's definitely not to the same extent that it was. That, that same obsession that I had before, because it's taken me from the 10th percentile to average height.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, even just knowing that, objectively and statistically, I'm average now.
Yeah.
It really, really did help me a lot.
That's so cool, man. Well, I'm very happy for you. Congratulations on, arriving at the end of your journey there. Do you have any final words for other patients or people who are just looking into possibly getting limb lengthening done?
So I'd say you do need to prepare mentally for it. And I think it's great what you're doing, disseminating this knowledge so people can get an understanding of what they're signing up for. And, stretch as much as you can. Stay healthy, exercise, good to build up a bit of muscle, because you will lose it when you're immobile for a bit. And if you can, get a strong support network, I think that's really important, to either have family or friends or just someone there, because it can get lonely, it can get difficult, things can go wrong. And, it's really important to have people around you to help you through it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, that's why we're trying to create more of a limb lengthening community online of positivity and, share experiences like this. Well, Jason, I want to thank you so much for coming on and sharing your experience with everyone, because I know it's going to be very, very helpful as I get more, insight into what the limb lengthening surgery experience is all about. So I appreciate you coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks to Jason for coming on and sharing their stature lengthening experience with us. We wish them well on the full road to recovery and success in everything they do. Now, if you're a current or former lengthening patient and you found this anonymous interview format acceptable and you'd like to share your limb lengthening journey, you can reach out to me at victor@cyborgforlife.com. That's my email, and we can set something up from there. Until next time, this is Victor from Cyborg for Life, signing out.